Hi guys, it's Callum and today we're doing something a little different. I've got for you today a Phasmophobia ghost tier list, and this is purely down to how difficult a ghost would be if you're a beginner, if that makes sense. Also, just a small note, this is all my opinion. If you disagree, then that's fine. Also, that's fine. That's fine. The comment section's there for a reason. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through each tier and I'm gonna tell you why I put them in each specific tier. So to start off, we got the bottom tier, which has the Shade and the Diogen. Right off the bat, you're gonna be saying, Callum, why is the Diogen there? Well, I put it there for one of two reasons. One, it's probably the easiest ghost to counter in the game, and two, it doesn't really fit this tier list in general, solely because you have to be level 50 to get the Diogen. And moving on into Shade, it's just not active at all. You're not really going to get any activities that's going to lower your sanity for a hunt, and I'm pretty sure it has the lowest sanity threshold in the whole game, sitting at 40. Also, you're likely not going to get any ghost events at all, which again is going to keep your sanity high. And yeah, it's just inactive. Moving on into the easy category, this is where I'm going to pinpoint two, which is one is going to be the Myling. Myling, I was actually considering putting in bottom tier, solely because in solo play, you don't speak in solo play, so how is its gimmick going to help you? If you're playing with friends, it'd probably be in blood pressure risen, but just in general during hunts, no one really speaks, so it stays in easy. Also in there is the Banshee, and yeah, people think this should be higher, but again on solo play, it doesn't really have any effect. But in groups of friends, it's really shows that it's a Banshee, because you never see it go to someone else, no matter how close you get. Banshee just continuously follows the same person around, so it's easy to tell which it is. And also it's just a glorified spirit with a tracker on. Moving on into blood pressure risen. The reason for spirit being in middle tiers, mainly because if you haven't gathered enough evidence, it mainly seems like it's not going to be a spirit, because spirits really vary in how active they are. Sometimes they can have shade level activity, sometimes they can have, I don't know, like Oni level activity. It just really depends, and that can end up confusing you to think it's another ghost. This also goes for zero evidence runs, because if you don't know what it is and it ends up being a spirit, it's probably one of the hardest ghosts to identify on zero evidence. But again, the one defining factor is the incense, which blocks it for 3 minutes, but that can also be defined as a ghost that does not want to hunt. And I've had that sometimes where it's been Diogen, I've smudged it and it hasn't hunt, and it didn't hunt for over 5 minutes even when I was on 0% sanity. So sometimes the incense timer doesn't really help that much, but for some people it might. I'm moving on to another one I think needs to be talked about, and this one is the Mimic. The Mimic is weird because sometimes the Mimic can change to be different types of ghosts. Like, it can act like a demon where it hunts immediately, or it can just act like a shade. And it could act like a Goryo, and then you have no hope. And then it can act like a Myling, where it's like, what's the point? So I think middle ground is probably the best place to put the Mimic. Also, not counting that it can be really easily identified on zero evidence by using the camera. But if you're going to be the starter, you're likely not going to use zero evidence. And thinking about it, you're likely going to forget that. You're likely not going to notice the four evidences. So now moving on to stay near the crucifix tier. And I've got Morai in there, mainly because most of the time I get killed by Morai, I haven't noticed it's a Morai yet. And that's mainly because when I use the spirit box to gather the evidence, I haven't realised I've been cursed. By the time I'm getting ready to get out, the door's closed and I'm dead. And I have no idea I'm that low, mainly because I've only been in the house for 2 fucking minutes. And mainly because I didn't realise that using the spirit box would be such a bad idea. Which, again, this is for new players, so new players wouldn't know they've been cursed, would they? Another one in there is the hand tube, because again, when you're a new player, you're not going to think anything of the temperatures being subjective to anything. But the thing that saves it from being in the kill me tier, though, is most people have the breaker on, which heats up the building, so it's going to be a lot easier to outrun during a hunt, and probably a lot easier to identify with the changing speed. At the same time, a new player probably wouldn't recognise that. Now moving up to the near high tier in the kill me section, and this one I really don't think needs explaining, but just in case I'm going to go over it. Revenant, you're not outrunning it, no matter if you're on a small map, because most new players are going to be unaware. They're probably not going to think it's going to be a fast ghost, so they're going to get killed the second the hunt begins. They, for the exact same reason, and because of the sanity threshold, which I think most new players aren't going to know about the sanity threshold. Demon, because it's very, very unpredictable and it just chooses its own poison whenever it wants. Jinn, because most new players are going to probably choose the lower difficulty, in which turns on the electricity box, which is going to give the Jinn its power. Oh dear. And finally, this is going to be probably the shocker one of the tier, but it's the Wraith. And again, I know a lot of professional players are going to be saying,
"Oh, what? It's probably the easiest one to identify."
yeah, no evidence. That's the only way it's really easy to identify, just because it doesn't stand in Salt, but new players probably aren't going to have access to Salt or know how to use it. If the new players are going to know one thing, it's probably that they're going to know how to loop. And if it's a Wraith, it's completely out the window, and they will likely die trying to loop a ghost that can go through the counter. And at last, we have You Never Stood a Chance, which, of course, the Goryo reigns supreme. You might just go into the house and think, it's Ghost Hunt once and I know what it is. You might think, oh, it's probably the easiest ghost to do over the game. But tell you what I think it is. Mercy. Take it and leave.